Okay, so I'll just go through one design here that's a little more complex than the previous things we looked at. Here we've got a tank. And as you can see, as part of the Waybe design, we've grouped the various components in such a manner to maintain a relatively simple complexity for each component. So now that with this design ready, we click on Plugins, Arrange Exploder Groups as before, and now we can see the different pieces of this tank set up for us. I'm going to purge the print window, which is something you do to get rid of any previous designs that have accumulated there, and then unfold object, and I'll go through these different pieces and one by one being exported to the print window. Okay, I won't do them all. I'm not building this right now, but let's now go to the print window. And sure enough, our pieces show up ready to be printed out. So the key takeaway from this tutorial is to remember that if you want to build complex designs in Waybe, it can be done, but you need to make sure that you break up your large design or your complex design into smaller components, group components, which are relatively simple and can be both unfolded and are small enough to fit on the paper, print paper. We're nearly done. There's only two other things I wanted to bring up. The first thing is setting up the default scene. So when you first enter into SketchUp, it's nice when you don't have another design to load, just go to Plugins and then create default scene, and it just creates a table. It gives you an idea. It's a meter by meter table. It gives you an idea of size constraints when you're using it, and gives you a feel of building. And also, it gives you a platform for testing your pieces, which brings us to the second final thing I wanted to discuss. The feature I want to discuss is testing. So testing is a feature that lets you get an idea of how your design will act in the real world. Testing only works on grouped pieces. You can right-click on your groups to change their settings, changes that will impact how they behave in the real-world simulation. So for example, if I right-click on this box, you can see that I'm giving some different options here. For example, a state I can say if I want this group to be frozen, static, or to be ignored by other objects, other groups. Or also I can select the material, wood or paper. In this case, the purpose of this distinction is for printing and unfolding. So wood objects will not be unfolded and printed, as they are physical objects that you already have in the real world, whereas paper will be. Shape lets you define the shape for the purposes of the physics simulation. So let's run the physics simulation and see what happens. And should note that for this Ferris wheel, I've defined a joint, a rotational joint with a rotational force on it. So you'll see it rotate. Whereas this box, I haven't defined anything for it, and it will just act under the normal physics simulation. One other comment would be if I right-click on the table, you can see that the state is static. So that means the table is going to stay still and act as a platform for these other two objects. So the simulation is started, and you can see that this piece here is rotating. I can also grab by left-clicking and holding onto the box and move it around the table. And you can see it kind of rolls around. And this sort of thing, I can drag it off the table, and it'll go flying down. Now when I'm finished with the simulation, I can hit this reset physics simulation button, and it'll bring things back to the way they were before I started the simulation. So the testing tools are derived from a SketchUp plugin called Sketchy Physics. Sketchy Physics has several other features like setting up joints, which is what I did for the Ferris wheel, between groups that you can explore on the website shown. Testing is certainly not necessary for making things with Waybe, but it can be useful for getting an idea of how your more mobile designs will act in real life. And with the completion of the testing discussion, that brings us to an end of the tutorial. I hope that you find Waybe and SketchUp usable, fun, and that it helps you create all the different things that you've always wanted to make.